Hi, welcome to this tutorial series about Stamps. Stamps is a free and production-ready smart node connection system for Nuke. It gives a solution to the problems of working with hidden inputs, while at the same time enabling a workflow where you can have all the assets organized and easily accessible for anyone in the team, while maintaining consistency across shots and being able to copy-paste any parts of the node tree without having to worry about lines, readability, or reconnecting nodes, because Stamps reconnect themselves whenever needed and in a predictable way, so you can have the best of both worlds. Stamps has made a big difference in my everyday compositing with Nuke. We're really excited to release it because it has been maturing over years and thoroughly tested in production in really different conditions and by people with different backgrounds. Stamps is currently used in studios of all sizes. For instance, it is a core part of how we work at Trickster, which was the first facility to fully implement it studio-wide in the compositing pipeline. The development has taken the best parts and concepts from different tools that we made over time, trying to solve the same problems while missing some important points. We believe Stamps gives a solution to them. Also, it has been developed taking into account all the variables that a small or big studio will need to check, like compatibility, licensing, render farm issues, or sharing scripts with third-party vendors, while also keeping the simplicity for the artist or a small house to implement it. Stamps encourages a way of working where you can avoid duplicating any nodes like cameras, rotos, or renders, or creating complex arrow connections in order to be able to pipe them into different parts of your script. What this means for the artist is an increase in compositing speed and efficacy. For the script itself, it's an improvement in size and processing speed. And for the team, it makes the script more consistent and easier to modify by different compositors. This is only an introduction video, but hopefully I'll be able to show how we believe Stamps can help keep more organized and speed up the compositing workflow and how it has improved our own compositing experience and efficiency substantially. Also, Stamps comes with a really complete user guide that includes all the details on how to use it, install it, and customize it to your needs. We believe the main benefits of incorporating Stamps into a pipeline are the following. As mentioned, all your main composites can be at the top of your script or in defined places, and you only need to load the assets a single time, like reads, cameras, geos, or rotos, saving I/O processing time. Sourcing several times from the same input means you can easily swap versions whenever there is a new render or element update. Auto-reconnecting means you don't have to think about copy-pasting nodes or node trees and connecting them manually anymore, as everything will get connected straight away to what it needs, even when copy-pasting between different Nuke scripts. You can also feel confident that you can always find where the stamp needs to be connected to, thanks to the advanced reconnect functionality. Also, making changes on the script from another compositor or using it to adapt it to your own shot becomes a lot easier, because as the main assets like renders or rotos are together, you don't need to go through the entire script fishing for assets or checking if you missed something. Also, the script itself will be a lot more readable, because the amount of non-relevant lines in the script will be substantially lower. It will avoid dot spiderwebs and allow for cleaner and smaller comp scripts. Stamps keep their internal ID when belonging to a template. So if a compositor does modifications to a template on a shot, and then the shot gets approved, those modifications can be transferred painlessly to similar shots through copy-pasting without thinking about reconnecting anything. Stamps are clearly defined in the node graph as places with hidden inputs, so you will save a lot of time you would spend creating organized lines and dots. At the same time, it makes extremely clear where the hidden lines are, so you never worry about deleting nodes that might have something connected to them. The only hidden connections on your script will be the ones between a stamp and an anchor. The tag system allows for organizing the stamps into categories, so you will have super quick access to every stamp from any part of the node graph. Stamps is fully customizable to each specific pipeline's requirements and naming conventions. Nuke scripts containing stamps can be opened by anyone that doesn't have them installed, so it can be also installed locally by single users without erroring on the farm, or even company-wide, while still being able to share the Nuke scripts with other studios whenever needed. And using Stamps for the artist is as easy as remembering a single hotkey. The hotkey is context dependent, so it performs many different actions based on what's selected. This release is a major thing for us, and we hope you will find it useful. In the next part, we will explore the basics on how to use Stamps. We will now dive a bit into the tool. Stamps have quite some options, but the core concept is extremely simple, and we find that new artists just take a few minutes to learn and start using them successfully. So by the end of this video, you will be able to see how stamps are used and how they could be incorporated into your workflow. The stamps workflow is based around two nodes, an anchor and a stamp. The anchor is the node that defines where your scripts are connected to. It is clearly distinguishable and serves as a visual reference to the places where stamps might be sourcing from. The stamp is the node that connects itself to an anchor through a hidden input and visually serves as a reference to that node, as you can also see it clearly. You can move it anywhere in the node graph, copy-paste it, or create it later at any moment through the quick access panels via tags, and it will always auto-reconnect straight away to its anchor. All the interaction is done through a single hotkey, which is context dependent. For example, when you select a node and press it, it will bring a panel to create a new anchor. When you select an anchor, it will make a stamp for it. When you select a stamp, it will duplicate it. Or if you select multiple nodes, it will sequentially do the appropriate action for all of them. And finally, if you select nothing, it will bring a quick panel to be able to find any stamp super quickly and create it anywhere. As you can see on the panel, the anchors have tags. You can add as many tags as you like to each anchor, and for each tag it will appear on its dropdown. This can be super useful for templates or for separating any group of nodes into a special category that you can then source at any moment with a single click. There are many utilities to make the tags workflow convenient and intuitive for artists and supervisors. Let's see an example. We have this basic setup, and we will start by creating a stamp for this camera. So we will select the camera, press the stamps hotkey, and you can see it picked the default title and the camera tag by default. We could change it for something else or add more tags, but let's leave it like this for now. Now, when we press the stamps hotkey anywhere on the script, you can see the camera under the camera dropdown, so we would be able to create it with a single click. Let's now create anchors for our two renders. So we will select both of them, press our stamps hotkey again, and they will get the default title that in this case is just what we want, as well as a 2D tag. So let's just click OK, and OK again. And now we will be able to access any of the anchors through the anchor selector again. Let's deselect everything and open it. So in the first section, you can see the different dropdowns for the tags that it finds, camera and 2D, the ones we created now. And it created a new section called backdrops, which, as you can imagine, refers to the labels of the backdrops where it finds stamps. So now we could go to renders and select any of the two stamps that we have and click OK. We will now continue this process with a really simple AOV split for the character. So let's remove these stamps that we don't want and create a stamp for the position pass. We'll just call it P. And once again, the anchor selector will get updated. As you see, now P appears under character. But what if we have another character? Let's repeat the process for the dog and create a stamp for its position, also called P. It's warning us that there's already a stamp named P, but we will accept it. You can now see there are two stamps which share the title P, but this isn't a problem because the title is only for display purposes, so each stamp will still know where to be connected. So if we disconnect this one and click on reconnect, it will find its own anchor. So how does this work? This takes us to the last concept that we'll cover in this video. Title versus name. The title is the text that the stamps have that only serves for display purposes on the node graph. So it can have spaces or any other character, or even be repeated in different nodes. But it's different to the internal name that the anchors and stamps have inside. So this real name is what defines their internal connections. The real name of an anchor contains a 10-character hash, so that each anchor is unique, and their child stamps have that anchor name stored inside of them. So whenever they get disconnected, we will be able to connect them back to the specific anchor where they belong. Also, when copy-pasting a stamp, for example, it will detect that it's being created again and reconnect itself straight away, thanks to the internal anchor name, which, as we said, is unique. As you can see, stamps and anchors expose several buttons on their properties panels that we can use for selecting or navigating through them. On the anchor, apart from being able to modify the title and tags at any moment, we have these buttons. New, we'll create a new stamp for it. If we click select, it will select all the child stamps on the node graph. If we click on reconnect, it will try to reconnect the children's stamps by name, which is the normal type of reconnection. And zoom next is a convenient function that lets us jump through the different stamps on the node graph. On the stamp, we can also modify the title, which will also apply the modifications to its anchor and sibling stamps. Show anchor will open the properties panel for the anchor. Zoom anchor will navigate to it on the node graph. Zoom next and select similar will behave the same as the equivalent buttons on the anchors. And reconnect will perform the normal reconnection on the stamp, which is to the anchor which has the corresponding internal name. We can find the internal name here. We will explain the advanced reconnections later, but first we will keep exploring all that we can do just with the basic options as well as the panels. In the next part, we will explain the rest of the main features of the stamps, as well as how a real workflow with titles, tags and labels could look like. We will now see how stamps are used in a production setting and the difference they can make in terms of speed and organization, especially in complex scripts, while showing some other features we haven't covered yet. The script we'll be showing was prepared by Tony Lyons, a great friend of ours who also has stamps as a core part of his workflow. He will probably make an extended video explaining his workflow, but for now we'll be using this as an opportunity to understand more about how stamps work, the philosophy, and the real workflow. As you see, one of the biggest changes that stamps enables is being able to place the assets together, so they are easier to replace at any moment and keep track of them. So on this script, you can see we placed the assets here. We have this group of dropdowns called effects, renders, comp assets, plates, camera lens, etc. So for each of the backdrops, you have all the needed assets for that shot. For example, in plates, you can see the master plate, which we have a stamp named master, the degrain, prep, or BGD noise. The main advantage of this workflow is that for someone like us that hasn't seen this script ever before, we can just come here and know that if we have to change the camera, we have to just go here to the camera. If we have a new version of a render, we can just go in renders and update the lighting, and so on. This is a full CG shot, and you can see that the main parts are being constructed based on assets from the top part, mainly the camera and the plate, in this case, for the background sky. So for the skyline render, it's connected to the shot cam, and the reformat. So at any moment, we can just copy paste that and it will be connected. So after the background is constructed, there is a precomp for it and the stamp, an anchor stamp. So we can access it in different parts of the script, although the main branch will still be piping from here. This huge setup you can see there is a CG gradient template. It's using light groups, AOVs, and all the utility passes. So it's reading from the render of our character, which comes from the render section, including all the AOVs. And it's doing the AOV splitting in utilities like RGBA, depth, normal position. It also has a cryptomat section. So at any moment, you could create a cryptomat for a part of the character and just make a stamp, and we can call it eyes, for example. The nice thing about this is that right now, if you need to grade the specular, for example, based on the eyes, you can just press the stamps hotkey, and under character, you'll have all the passes. So any stamps that are created inside of the character will appear here under the backdrop of character. The backdrops are ordered by amount of items. So character and second char are the biggest ones, and all the rest will be below it. So you always have your characters on the top. Something else we didn't show before is that on this anchor selector, you have here all the stamps on the script. Then you have the popular ones, which means the anchors that have more stamps. In this case, there's 20 stamps for the camera. And down here, you have the option to select any stamp by title. So you could type motion vector, for example, or you could just go with the suggestion of shotcam, which is the latest one you made. The good thing that this enables is that we can bring the panel at any moment. Just click enter, and it will make, again, the last stamp that we made. So let's go through the grading of the AOVs, for example. Tony was using here a position pass, an RGBA, and making some position mats and using that to grade the specular, for example. Here there's a more complex part. So he's also using normals and position, then a custom mat he made. You can see all of this is organized and it's really visual. Right now you can see that this is using the normals without having to go through a main pipe and shuffling out stuff. Same with all this part. And at any moment you can see where they are piping from. So this is really convenient. And you don't worry about having anything disconnected because the moment you open it, you can just click on reconnect and that will work. And you have the advanced reconnections, which we'll cover in a separate part. So this really lets you see the bigger picture and have every section organized while keeping focused on where the main pipes are. So the main pipes in this part are the AOVs being split, being merged again, and the main pipe that goes through here. And you don't get distracted by all the extra arrows that are just pointing to assets. So you don't have to sort all these connections you're seeing right now, and you can just focus on what matters for the comp while not losing readability. By the way, we're also including a W-hotbox group of items for the stamps. So you can have quick access to reconnection, for example. I'm using it all the time and it really makes my workflow quite faster. So yeah, let's keep going through it. You can see, in this case, he was using the black color from the BG Sky. So he's using the output of the background. Something nice is that you know that there will not be any hidden connections to any nodes, except for whatever you see anchors, and anchors are super clearly defined. So that really gives you peace of mind while compositing. And yeah, in this case, he is merging it with another version of the character, which has the same gradient template with all the stamps inside. As you can see, the RGBA is not colliding with the other one because they have an internal name that is different, and so on. So yeah, if we keep going, you can see that's being piped into the main branch. Some glints added, black points, pre-comp, formats, output stamp, so you can do any look depth tests or whatever. And again, we are using UV maps from the stamps, so they are considered an asset in this case. So as you can see, this is a pretty complex setup, and it's using the stamps in many places. But you can clearly grasp the idea of how a workflow with them would be like. For us, it's changing a lot, the way of comping, and we actually can't remember how we were doing it before. Something else, if you want to hide any backdrops from here, you can simply go to the backdrop and turn off the bookmark. Just by doing that, we won't see the BG Sky anymore, although it contains the anchor stamp. Now we'll quickly see how we could add tags to a group of stamps, so we will be able to access them faster later. So in this case, let's imagine we want this and that to have a tag. We could just go inside of the anchor and name it here. Or we could select both anchors and go to Edit, Stamps, Add Tag to the selected nodes. Or Hotbox, Add Tags. Then we could say card to the selected stamps, for example. So now we will have a card dropdown for super quick access to them. If we decide that we want to change them, we could also go inside of them and change it here with commas. Or we could select both of them and go to Edit, Stamps, Rename Stamp Tag. Or W-hotbox, Rename Tag. So to finish this part, we'll see an example of how stamps could be used in conjunction with templates. Let's imagine we have a grain setup that needs a plate denoised, original plate, and the comp output. So we could go and bring a stamp for the plate, under plates, master. Now bring another one for the degrain, and we would connect them. A powerful feature of stamps is that we could just automate all this part, as long as there's a naming convention of master and degrain, for example. So we could make a setup that you can just bring it, and they will be connected straight away. This can be useful for renders or for anything else, but this is a good example, I think. So I hope you enjoyed seeing a practical production example, and in the next part we will be seeing the advanced recognition features, how they make stamps highly more robust and human error proof, and how they are useful for making smart templates. The advanced recognition functionality lets us fix inconsistencies in the naming or the title of the stamps, either due to human errors, lack of naming conventions, or differences in the internal name of the anchors, because maybe they were created in different moments. This is especially useful when moving node trees from one script to another, and really closes the gap on the problems that a hidden input system like stamps need to solve. For this, we'll see a practical example. So we have this shot where we have this plate, and we have to comp some creatures and some effects renders. Again, we have a group of backdrops to help us organize the nodes into different categories and have quick access to them. And we will start by just making stamps for the stuff we need. So let's make a stamp for the plate. You see the default name is good. And we can select all the renders and make stamps for them, just with a single click. And we'll just click OK, check that the names are what we want, and we could do the same thing with the effects renders. And the default naming that the stamps are guessing is just what we need also. And we could do that with the camera too. So again, just by doing that, we have all the assets into categories now. Let's bring the plate, and let's bring the first character. Now let's merge it, and we could keep going with the rest of the comp. So we just made a really basic skeleton with the plate, the shadows merged together, and using them to create the plate, the Goomba, the bombs, and the props. Now we see that we need a mask for the character, so a good way of doing it with stamps would be to simply create it, and after we work on the roto, we could just save it in a masks category, for example, and make a stamp for it. This way we are treating the mask as an asset, and at any moment we can make changes or another compositor can make them and know where to look for the masks. Also, this way we can use it anywhere else on the script, and we clearly know all the time for which elements we have rotos. Now we could want to grade our Goomba. So let's make some space and bring a simple AOV grading template I made. That's similar to the one we saw on the practical example before, but it's basically separating the utility passes and IDs or anything we need. So this is just an example template that doesn't really work properly, but it's enough for us to see how we could use stamps and how the advanced recognitions will come into play. We also have a convenient way to add lens distortion to our renders. So if we have here our distortion setup and we plug it to a UV map, we can make a stamp. So now we can use our stamp with this lens distortion everywhere in the script. We just need an STMap node, and we can just copy these nodes and paste them anywhere we need. Now we will see the advanced recognition features. A colleague is also working on a similar shot, and the shot gets approved. So we are asked to match it. Our colleague also worked with stamps, so we will open their script and see which bits we need to bring to our shot. So this is the script of our colleague, and our next mission will be to see which things are changed from that shot to our shot. So we will first check the assets and see if there's anything different, and it looks really similar to our shot. We see it's also using shadows, the same way we are. It has an AOV split template, and some corrections here. We will just copy this part. Next, we see the corrections that have been done to the Goomba, and on the diffuse, there's this grade, this other grade, and the normal imposition being used for relighting. So we can copy this and paste it on our shot. So as you see, the normal imposition were reconnected perfectly, thanks to the internal anchor name belonging to a template. Let's keep going. Our colleague is also using the camera, so we can copy this tree and paste it on our coins. Something we see now is the camera turns red, warning us that it couldn't connect. So let's open it. And if we click on reconnect, we can see it's not able to connect still. So now our problem is that even though the camera is named the same way to our camera, the internal anchor name is not the same because both anchors were created in different moments of time. So the anchor has this name and our camera has this other name. This is where the advanced recognition features are handy. So we could just open the stamp and open the advanced recognition section, and we can connect it by title. Reconnect by title means that it will look for the anchor that has this title and connect to it. So it was as easy as that. Now the stamp changed its internal name to the internal name of the anchor. So whenever it gets disconnected again, we can just reconnect normally and it will find it. By the way, this is also accessible on the W hotbox. So let's keep going. We see that our colleague is applying some modifications to the lens distortion. So we will take this one instead and paste it to our shot. Again, this is not able to connect. And the reason is that the title is different to the one that we are using. So for this case, the last resort of reconnections will be the reconnect by selection. What this lets us do is force the reconnection to any anchor. The way to use it would be to open the properties panel for the stamp, look for the anchor that we want to connect to, and click on reconnect this by selection. That way we forced the reconnection to the anchor we want, and both the title and internal name has been updated to the one for our shot. This is really convenient for the cases where two anchors are named differently and you just want to merge them. So we will make another lens distortion here and copy the stamp a few times. So this would be the case where we brought it from another shot, for example. So we can just select all the stamps plus the anchor that we want, and we can just click on reconnect by selection. Now they all changed to the new anchor. So this sums up the advanced reconnections of the stamps, and in the next part we will see how to set up smart templates and toolsets using stamps, and how they can help us work more efficiently, especially with teams. Let's see now how to set up smart templates and toolsets thanks to the advanced reconnection features of stamps, and how to make templates that also auto-reconnect to external nodes for the cases where we have naming conventions on a sequence, project, or studio. We will start with an example CG grading template, like the one we see right here. So the first step would be to set it up normally, and check that all the stamps have a proper naming. Next, we could try to open the anchor selector. And as we see, there are three backdrops appearing: CG character, utilities, and IDs. The idea is that when you bring the template, you will be renaming the CG character, but we don't want to see the other backdrops because they will be repeated for every character. So now we can simply hide them by opening the backdrop and disabling the bookmark. Let's do the same with IDs. So now we will only see the stamps under CG character. Now we can just select this and save it as a template. If we are in a sequence where we will have the Goomba many times, for example, we could save a Goomba template. We can just rename this to Goomba and add any custom modifications we want for the Goomba. As the lighting department has a convention for how the Goomba is named, we will also be able to set up the default title for the stamp. So as we know it will be called Goomba, now we can set it up so that the template also comes with a stamp that will connect to Goomba. So let's copy and paste it and save it as a template. You can save it anywhere, but now we will do it as a toolset. Let's call it Goomba template. So now we can bring the Goomba template and it will auto-reconnect to the Goomba. The problem with this is the same we had before, that this connects based on the internal name. So if we remove it and make a new Goomba stamp, like if we are in a different shot, when we now bring the template, it will not be able to reconnect because it has to reconnect by title and not by name. The way to solve this is through a control named auto-reconnect by title. If you just enable that checkbox, the next time this stamp is created, it will look for the anchor by title and not by name. So now we can save the template again. So the next time we bring a Goomba on a new shot and make the stamp, we can bring the template and it will be connected straight away. This can also be useful for setups that need access to a camera, for example. So let's make that now. We'll make a stamp for the camera, and our setup will consist only of a camera and a scanline render. Again, we need to activate the auto-reconnect by title so that it looks for the anchor named camera, whatever its internal hash name. And now when we save this setup, we'll be able to copy-paste it, and the camera will always be connected. So now when we create the setup on a new shot, the camera again will be connected. Just a quick note before finishing this part is that if you want to make a setup that you can bring with some node selected, like the sphere, and you save it like this will happen, that the stamp will be connected and not the scanline render as expected. So the way to solve this is by connecting the nodes that we will want to be connected, disconnecting the stamps, and saving the setup like that. Now when we bring the setup, the nodes that had inputs will be the ones that will take the new input, and the stamps will auto-reconnect as soon as we click away. By the way, if you want to enable or disable the auto-reconnect by title on many stamps at the same time, you can just select them and click on auto-reconnect by title toggle on the hotbox, and it will turn it on or off for all of them. So that was it for the templates. In the next part, we will see the pipeline customization options for stamps, to fit the needs of your pipeline, and to help minimize human error and maximize the correlation between shots, and how things are named. This really has advantages in many different situations. Now we will see the different ways in which you can customize stamps for yourself or your team. The main points we will cover are how to change the stamps hotkey, how to set up different shapes for the anchors and stamps through node classes, how to change the color and style for the stamps, overall or specifically for each stamp type, how to set up the exceptions for the classes that qualify for the different types of stamps, and more importantly, how to define a Python function that drives the default title and tags that the stamps will guess based on your pipeline's naming conventions, so that the defaults will work most times and you save a lot of time typing stamp titles while helping with the naming consistency across artists. In order to access the customization for the stamps, you will need to include this file in your plugin path. For example, pasting it next to stamps.py in your new folder, or wherever you installed it. All customization should be done on this file, so that every time I release new versions for stamps, you'll be able to only replace the stamps.py file while preserving your customizations on stamps config. When we open stamps config with a text editor, the first thing we see is the definitions for the hotkey and default color of the anchors and stamps, as well as the font size. For the shortcut, we could define any other shortcut like comma or shift set. For the node defaults, we could add any extra knobs that we want to modify, and the stamps will pick it. For example, let's change the font with node font. Also, we can override colors per stamps class. In this case, we're making the camera stamp slightly more red than the others. The next function we see is default title. This one defines the default title that a stamp will get, given the input node on which it's created. It already comes with a few examples. The first one, for instance, does the following. If the class of the input node contains camera, the default title for the stamp will be cam. We could improve it further, for example, by doing so only the first time we create a camera stamp. We can do it by checking if there's any other node titled camera for all nodes. In the second example, more interesting for a pipeline, it creates the default title for the read nodes. For that, it looks inside of the file knob of the read node and filters through it. This is powerful when customized to the naming conventions of your renders, plates, etc. The next function we will see is default tags. It returns a list of default tags for the new stamp panel, given the node where the stamp is created. In the simple example that is included, it makes the tag file out for every stamp we make on a write node. As you see, it's also including the tag 2D, because our custom default tags are appended to the stamp's defaults. If we want to completely override them, we can set this constant to false. Keep original tags. Now we will only see our custom tags. The next constants we see are the exception classes, which we can also override. This is what defines if a node class is considered deep, geometry, 2D, and so on. You shouldn't need to modify it except if you have custom plugins in your studio that don't get the stamp class they should. Finally, we can define the internal class of the stamps for each node type. The default stamps class will always be no-op, which is encouraged. However, we can make the deep stamps have the shape of a deep node by overriding its class for a deep expression. As you see here, this stamp is really a deep expression. However, stamps is hiding all the other knobs, so workflow-wise it will be exactly the same. We could also make this with geometry, axes, or particles. We have implemented this successfully in a few studios already, and it really makes the scripts more readable, while not affecting the performance too much. Just a quick note for the case of the camera, which is special. As you know, cameras not only read the matrix from upstream, but also have a projection tab that includes the sensor and lens settings. This has traditionally been a major issue that prevented the creation of no-op cameras plugged into other cameras, and I solved this with a gizmo named DummyCam, which is available on Wikipedia and also included with stamps. DummyCam is a smart camera that grabs the lens values from the camera upstream, even if it's inside of a group. It doesn't take the top node, as it could also be an axis, but instead it recursively looks for the camera through TCL, so it's really fast and live and usable. The way to use the DummyCam gizmo as a class for the camera stamps is to include it in your plugin directory, like in .nuke or next to the stamps, and then simply set it here as the stamp class for the cameras. Now our camera stamps will be nice and round. These are the current customizations that are available for stamps version 1.0, which will probably keep expanding in the future. I hope you enjoyed this series and will find stamps a useful tool to improve your compositing speed and organization. See you in the next one.